So if you're thinking about the current situation in South Africa, solar irrigation, solar energy for irrigation isn't that widely used at this stage, and we'll often find that solar energy is used for other activities on the farm. Firstly, the pumps that we currently use, so the infrastructure and current setup is not particularly conducive to being changed over to solar energy power supply, since we need quite a lot of energy for the initial startup of those pumps. So perhaps a midway between that would be to use normal energy supply for the initial startup process, and then once those pumps are running in the phase where they require less energy, then to sustain that on a solar energy system. But yeah, so that at this stage we can't definitively say that solar energy is only used for irrigation in vineyards, but it's used for many other purposes around the farm. So especially some of the farms that have quite large solar panel setups, they would run a portion of the cellar, but they will also run mostly office buildings, homes, so anything that just uses general lighting, general appliances, things like that. So that is usually also restaurants. So of course in South Africa we have a lot of the wineries that also go to the culinary side and have restaurants, so that would all be run from solar energy. The one benefit of solar energy is, or especially in South Africa, would be that we have ample supply of sunlight, which makes that not a problem. But the difficulty is in storing that energy, having the necessary battery systems, making sure that those batteries are maintained and can also last quite a long time. So at this stage it's still new. There are a few large suppliers that use solar energy on the farm at this stage, but I think it is something that will benefit farmers in the future, especially if we're looking at the current South African scenario where we do have a problem with energy supply on a national basis. So that is also quite disruptive to industry. So I think it is pushing a lot of people to start considering alternative methods, especially solar energy. We've seen a lot of people in a private capacity moving their homes off the grid. So of course it's a little bit more difficult moving an entire farm or production unit off the grid, but I don't think it's impossible, and it's something that's probably going to become more feasible and more achievable for producers in the future. If you're looking at the legislation, that is one of the hurdles that we've had. So apart from the current infrastructure not being suitable to change to solar energy, we also have a problem of the legislation. So previously we could not use solar energy for, sorry, some noise in the background, just to excuse that. So basically you were limited in the amount of megawatts that you could actually produce for your own consumption. So that also means limited amount that you can produce, and also only for your own consumption. So you can't produce it in one area and then use it off-site. So for instance, that would be if we had 2 or 3 producers that club together and then actually set up a solar system and then all tap into that would actually not be allowed. Legislation is changing, so in, I think it was 2021, there was an increase in the amount of energy which one could produce, so that now becomes more lucrative, more feasible for larger producers to actually be allowed to maintain the system. There's also talks and discussions about allowing communities to actually put up almost like their own little substation of solar energy, and then being able to supply one another with that. So that would be sharing the costs of the initial capital expense to put up the system, and then also everyone reaping the benefit. The other thing is putting energy back into the grid. So that's also something that hasn't been allowed at this stage. So in terms of if you are producing a surplus, you can't supply that back to the national energy supplier in the grid. So that is also something that's probably under review and should be under review for going forward. If you could perhaps get a rebate on the amount of energy that you supply back, or get a reduction in the cost of electricity as an incentive, I think it would push a lot of people towards putting up the infrastructure for solar energy plants. Having said that, it's also the cost of energy has gone up significantly over the past few years and is constantly increasing. So I think that's definitely something pushing suppliers or producers towards finding alternative ways of making themselves self-sufficient.